was laughing when I killed my mother.
Why'd you get rid of that shirt?
It had pieces of my mother's brain stuck to it.
This is 15-year-old Zachary Davis. His interrogation had detectives, judges, and even psychiatrists debate his state of mind. Was he a depressed, schizophrenic child with profound but unaddressed issues? Or was he a cold-blooded serial killer, evil to the core and completely irredeemable?
I was kind of expecting the fire to kill him. I killed Josh with a sledgehammer too.
Let's delve deep into one of the most shocking police interrogations ever recorded and see if we can understand Zachary's creepy murder motive by reading between the lines. Trigger warning, the following video discusses extreme violence, mental health issues in teens, suicidal thoughts, and death. Watch on at your own risk. Today's case begins in the 60,000 people town of Hendersonville, Tennessee. Hendersonville was once home to the famous singers Johnny Cash, June Carter Cash, and Roy Orbison. Today, it's a great, peaceful alternative to busy cities like Nashville. Of course, that might not be what a teenager wants, but in the case of Zachary Davis, quietude was all he was seeking. Zachary was born in 1997 in a different part of Tennessee, to parents Melanie and Chris. He grew up with his brother Josh, who was 3 years older than him, and a pair of loving parents. It was a tightly knit family who enjoyed lots of activities together. But early on, it became clear that Zach wasn't like Josh, boyish, outgoing, and up for any weekend activity. Zach was pretty quiet. He didn't seem to make friends at school or talk about his feelings with his family. And in 2007, any mental issues Zach might have already had reached unprecedented highs. His dad, Chris, succumbed to Lou Gehrig's disease. This is a type of sclerosis, a progressive nervous system disease that affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, causing loss of muscle control. Sadly, no cause or cure is known for this fatal disease. The moment Chris was diagnosed with it, he knew he would never see his sons grow up. Needless to say, Josh and Melanie were affected too. But Zach? Well, he went down a truly dark rabbit hole. No one could get through to him. When Melanie realized Zach was not okay, she took him to see a psychiatrist called Dr. Bradley Freeman at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. The psychiatrist noted that Zach certainly did suffer from some kind of mental defect. Zach told Bradley that he could hear voices, specifically the voice of his father talking to him at night. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and depressive disorder. This is an extremely rare diagnosis for a 9-year-old. Depression on its own is usual for a child grieving a parent, but in most cases, there are 3 clear phases to bereavement: numbness, depression, and recovery. Sadly, Zach never made it to the recovery phase. Chris's mother blames Melanie for it. As she explained during Zach's trial, Melanie pulled him out of therapy after just 4 sessions. If he continued therapy, this would not have happened. In 2008, Melanie took her 2 sons and moved to Gallatin, Sumner County. Melanie was seeking a fresh start. She thought it would be good for Josh and Zach to see a different house, a different scenery, and a different school. 2007 had been a very tough year for the 3 of them, and having fewer reminders of it would be better. But Zach's mental health was plummeting fast. He barely spoke to his brother anymore, and he was his only friend. So Melanie took him to a few other therapists in Sumner County.
Have you ever had to see a doctor for anything as far as having problems with thinking about things or anything? I saw a therapist shortly after I was in a very long direction of time. What was that about? Who wanted to see a therapist? My mother. She did? Okay, so there was just a couple.
Zach was once again diagnosed with depressive disorder. This time, psychosis was also noted. This is a symptom associated with schizophrenia. Up until the moment Zach would become a killer, he had meetings with therapists and school counselors on a pretty regular basis. But absolutely no one saw him capable of killing his mother with a sledgehammer and setting fire to the house in the hope of killing his brother too. In the very early hours of August 10th, 2012, someone called 911 in a panic. It was Josh. His house was on fire, his mother had been to death, and his little brother was missing. When emergency services arrived, the first priority was to stop the fire. Everyone assumed it had been a terrible accident, and Melanie had succumbed to the flames or got suffocated by the smoke. But then officers stepped inside the house and examined Melanie's body. Her head was practically smashed in. The murder weapon, a sledgehammer from the worst of horror movies, was still there, left leaning against her bedroom door. Melanie had been hit 12 times with almost superhuman strength. Someone really wanted her dead. It was a truly terrible sight, something that would scar Josh for life. Josh was asleep when Melanie was killed and the house caught fire. He was woken up by the smoke alarm.
Woke up around, I'm not sure what time it is, time of the thing was going off. And, at first I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like a sound in my room. Then I figured out it was a fire alarm. I was running around and I was looking for my brother upstairs in his room. He wasn't in there and I saw the fire was started in there. So I ran downstairs to get my mom and the door was locked. So I had to kick the door in to get in there. And then I saw her on the bed.
Putting two and two together, the police constructed a dark scenario. Could Zachary have been responsible for this? 5 miles away from their home, Zach was found walking down a town road, drinking from a can of Pepsi and attempting to leave town. He was immediately arrested. But even as he entered the interrogation room, the detectives weren't expecting to hear what they did.
This is the sheriff's office, and what we'd like to do is talk to you about something happened at your house, and that's what we kind of want to talk to you about. You want to go ahead and talk to us about what happened tonight?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. If you do, just Zach, what I want to do is make sure you understand that this is a waiver, right? Saying you're waiving your rights. What I'd like to do is make sure you can read and write. If you would, read that last paragraph out loud.
As soon as Zach opened his mouth to read the statement, the detective noticed something was off. 15-year-olds don't normally talk like this.
I've read this statement of my rights and understand what my rights are.
Yeah, creepy to say the least. But this was also a defining moment for the interrogation, as Zach, still underage, agreed to talk to the cop without a lawyer or an adult present. Throughout the whole interrogation, he showed zero emotion and seemed to be completely emotionally detached, regardless of the question.
You've never been in any trouble, have you? No, sir. So, no trouble in school, nothing like that? No, sir.
The detective started asking himself, as early as the first minute of the interrogation, was Zach's strange tone the result of mental illness, perhaps schizophrenia? Or was this an act, something Zach was trying to be in front of the cop? To get an answer, the detective brought up something he already knew about. Of course, while Zach was being arrested, the other investigators dug up all the information they could get on him. That's when they found out about his father's death and about the downward spiral he'd been on ever since.
I understand that your father had passed away. Yes, sir. How did he pass away? He died from Parkinson's disease. Pretty rough on you, wasn't it? No, sir. It didn't bother you? No, sir. I was told that it bothered you. That you were upset about your dad. Is that not true? No, sir. So it is true? No, sir. Okay.
By now, the detective already knew Zach was lying. Josh, their grandparents, and whoever knew Zach remembered all too well. Zach was devastated by his father's death. Not only did it bother him, it destroyed his mental health for life. So why was Zach hiding this?
Something went on at your house today, and I'd just kind of like you to kind of tell us what happened.
I killed my mom in her sleep with a sledgehammer.
Oh, okay. So he was honest about that. Zach was brutally honest and almost proud of his action. It was almost as if he was waiting for the detective to ask him that question. He took on a position in everything.
I killed my mom in her sleep with a sledgehammer.
The detective surely wasn't expecting a straightforward confession like that, especially after Zach was lying about not being affected by Chris's death. However, when it came to his murder motive, it would be a carousel. Zach would give several reasons, withhold more information from the cop, then lie, and then withhold some more information. Then switch his story a dozen times.
Is there a reason why you did that?
Yes, sir.
Well, can you tell me what?
No, sir.
You can't tell me why? I'm sure. Is it a reason you don't know why you did it, or you just don't want to tell? I didn't know why I did it. Just not tell. Okay.
Imagine how frustrating it is to hear that. The detective's only option was to talk about facts, clear out what he could.
Did you set the house on fire too? I tried to. I don't know if it actually got the whole house on fire though. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, it did. I mean, a little bit, I think, but not bad or anything.
Notice how the detective still hasn't asked Zach about his brother yet. At this point, he was still trying to understand why Zach butchered his mother.
Have you been having problems with your mom? Not sure.
Then, where's the motive? Here's what's extra creepy. The investigators went through the many texts between Zach and Melanie. It turns out, Zach did show emotion. Melanie, hey, could the three of us have dinner together when I get home? Maybe Chinese? Good morning, sweet child. I hope you slept well. Zach, sorry, I was asleep. Didn't it expire on the 24th? What sort of cold-blooded murderer sends his victim heart emojis?
We found a book on a notepad that was on you. It said some things in there. Is that notepad yours that we found? It talks about your mom and about. Yes, sure. And that's what's so important about this. I mean, we want to understand what. Like I said, you don't have to tell us if you don't want to. I mean, but we want to understand. What happened.
You might wonder why the detective is so friendly to a boy who just smashed his mother's head in. Well, it's a known tactic called the read technique. The detective makes the suspect feel comfortable so that they trust him and open up. Confrontation is saved for later. In the case of Zachary, this seems quite mandatory. He already is a notoriously quiet person that keeps to himself and communicates nothing. If he felt threatened in any way by the cop or the idea of a life sentence, there was a strong chance he wouldn't have said anything at all.
Would you feel more comfortable if there was just one person in the room?
I don't mind having two people.
Okay.
Sure. Yes, sure.
Meanwhile, the detectives looked at Melanie's life. She was a pretty busy person. She worked as a paralegal, oftentimes long hours, and then in her spare time, she trained hard as a triathlete. In the eyes of Josh, she was also a good mom, always staying in contact with her boys and making sure they had everything they needed. But from Zach's point of view, she needed to spend more time with them. However, this truth would come to light much later. On the day of the murder, Melanie started her day by taking Josh to the orthodontist. She texted Zach, "Hey, sweetie, I just took Josh to the orthodontist. We'll be back hopefully soon. We can see Born or Campaign today. I want to see both." Her very last message was sent to her killer. Okay, heart. It's truly heartbreaking to think that Melanie never knew how much hatred her son bore for her.
What's Zach doing when you get home?
I think she's playing Xbox. We kind of keep to ourselves, I guess.
Okay, so you and Zach don't have a good relationship?
Well, no, we do. It's just like I don't know. Like he just kind of, stays to himself. He's kind of a quiet person, I guess.
Have you been having any problems? I mean,
he's always been kind of like quiet. I guess odd.
Josh found it hard to admit that his brother is odd. The two were as close as they could be under the circumstances. They often played video games together and watched movies in the evening together with Melanie. Josh was Zach's closest friend, and Josh was fiercely defensive of him whenever Zach got into social trouble at school.
He was like like a piece of paper, like how you roll up a thing of paper. He was kind of hitting him with that.
Hitting Zach with it?
Yeah, and I told the kid to stop, and he went up there and did it again.
Josh would get into fights with whoever bullied his little brother. But Josh also had a life of his own and friends outside the family house. It's strange then that Josh was the center of Zach's world, and yet he talked about him this way.
What kind of person is your brother?
Your typical male teenager.
Typical male teenager. You two get along pretty good? Sometimes.
Stating the obvious again, but what sort of 15-year-old refers to his big brother as your typical male teenager? What's more, the investigators revealed dozens of friendly text messages between the two. Here's one instance. Zach's birthday was coming up and Josh wanted to invite his friend Ryan to join the party, but Zach said he wanted to celebrate his birthday alone, so his big brother texted him, "If you don't want Ryan to come over, I can tell him not to. I want you to have your birthday the way you want it, and I especially want you to be happy on your birthday." Now, that's a really nice message. Both boys talked to each other in a friendly tone, and both used heart emojis and wrote "I love you" to each other. Yep, they were close, but Zach acted like they weren't. By the time he was interrogating him, the detective knew this. He also knew that Zach only called his mother or brother. He pressed him about it, hoping to get to the bottom of the murder motive.
When you talk to people on the phone, who do you talk to? I mean, do you have friends you chat with or anything like that?
No, sir. I usually only talk to my mother and my brother on my phone.
So you don't have any friends other than your mother and your brother that you talk to?
No, sir. But your brother lives there with you too, right? That's the only person lives with you? Yes, sir. Did you do anything to him? No, sir. I was kind of expecting the fire to kill him. Oh, you were? Okay.
How does this make any sense? Why would Zach kill his two best friends, his only friends? By now, Zachary confirmed murder and attempted murder. Then he blatantly admitted to premeditated murder.
When you get home and your mom goes to bed at 9, where are you and what are you doing in the house? Are you in the house?
I was in my room already planning everything.
You were in your bedroom or in the room where the fire was started?
The room where the fire was started.
What do you call that room?
What do you call it? Game room.
Game room? So you're in the game room planning everything?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Zach described how it only took him a few minutes to come up with the plan, but that he waited for hours to make sure Melanie and Josh were asleep.
I just waited and then checked on them.
Just checked on them, opened the door and looked at them?
Yes, sir. I killed her at around 11 p.m., I think. And I think she went to sleep at around 9 o'clock.
No matter how gruesome the questions got, Zach continued to show no emotion.
How many times did you hit her with the sledgehammer? I don't know. I mean, any estimation? I'd say at least 12 times. Where did you hit her at on her body? Around the head area.
And here's a dark twist.
Did you touch her anywhere else?
No, sir.
Have you thought about touching her anywhere else?
No, sir.
Now, this is unconfirmed, but usually if a detective asks this, it's because the autopsy showed something. Did Zachary have a profound Oedipus complex? Given that Josh was asked the same question, the autopsy theory is pretty likely.
When you went in the bedroom, at any time did you touch your mom?
Yeah, Summer County.
When you went in that room?
No, I don't think so. Like, I kind of, no.
He witnessed the altercation.
Like, I ran in and because then I saw her, and I freaked me out.
Here's another dark twist. Zach might have planned the murder only a few hours ahead, but he'd wanted to kill his mom for years.
When did you think about doing this? I mean, when did this pop into your head as far as killing your mom? Several years ago. Had you told anybody about it? No, sure.
Still, the detective couldn't get any proof that Zach hated his mom.
Was she a pretty good mom, or? She wasn't very good mom. She wasn't very good. I don't know.
Slowly but surely, the detective was uncovering a fact about Zachary. He was obsessed with serial killers. Here's what Zachary wrote in January 2012. After reading dozens of news reports about killers, I believe I've found several consistent reasons why most killers are caught within a year. They rely too much on civilization. Most killers hide out in heavy populated areas or easily accessible areas. They don't migrate to other areas after several kills in a row. This makes the police in their area more alert and the citizens more cautious. Most rely too much on firearms or other weapons that produce loud noises. This will attract unwanted attention to their location. Did you notice how this is written in the same monotonous, almost encyclopedia-like style? This was the persona Zach wanted to take. It wasn't the same tone he used when he spoke to his family. Clearly, Zachary was delusional. He thought he could outsmart all the serial killers that had been caught and escape justice after killing his own family. He was caught 4 hours after his murder without a plan to escape. Just walking out of town without a phone or money is not really a plan. Could this demonstrate his schizophrenia? Toward the end of the interrogation, the detective tried to understand if Zachary had motives for killing Josh too.
Were you provoked by your brother?
No, sure.
Were you provoked by your mother?
No, sure.
The more he was confronted with his motive, the more he struggled to give a straight answer.
You didn't try and talk to anybody about this? No, sure. Why not? I mean, did this not bother you? Or? Yeah, sure. Did it bother you? No, sure. Oh, it did bother you?
Yeah, you can hear how the detective wasn't even trying to sound like he believed Zach. The running theory goes as follows. Zachary was clearly affectionate toward his mother and his brother before the murder, but in his journals and notes, he showed a cold, detached serial killer tone. He used the same tone with the cop. So Zachary wanted to be a serial killer. This was all an act. He wanted to look evil and cold-hearted, and perhaps this came as a coping mechanism when his father died. It was easier to cut off all emotional attachment than to feel the full power of grief and loss.
I mean, was there any problems between you and him, or him and your mom, or
Not that I know of.
did they have any disagreements, or I mean, was there anything
Like, I think they would argue.
other than normal
Yeah.
parents?
Not that I know of.
Watch Zachary's tone as he describes this.
Was it the same pants you were wearing?
Yeah, sure.
That's the same shirt you were wearing?
No, sure.
Where's the shirt you were wearing?
I threw it away.
Why'd you get rid of that shirt?
It had pieces of my mother's brain stuck to it.
Sheesh. Then came another nail to the cross regarding the serial killer copycat theory. On the day of the murder, Zach was reading Stephen King's Misery. This is a horror story where the central character goes on a murder spree using an axe. In the movie adaptation, she uses a sledgehammer. Sound familiar?
Are you sure you didn't get any of your thought process from that book?
Yeah, sure.
So, so do you think, so you're saying that's strictly coincidence?
Yes, sir.
Finally, the second detective stepped in.
Zach, we've been doing this a long time, and I mean, sledgehammer is a very unusual weapon to kill somebody with.
His only answer?
I ordered used to mine, but I was worried that I missed the vital area.
A quick search of Zach's phone revealed that he had 2 apps, one about serial killers and one about torture devices. He also had a myriad of gory images saved on his phone and computer, and bookmarked websites on famous murders, Louisville Chainsaw Murder and Nevada Tan included. He also bookmarked an article on understanding schizophrenia. Perhaps that was the part of him that really wanted help. But the other part, well, it wrote things like this: hanging over the masses like a shadow or a dark cloud, executing them all one by one without a sound, omnipresent and biding its time, ready to steal you away at your prime. Welcome to the stupid and the bold, not following any pattern, just doing as told. Laying to rest kings, queens, peasants, and thrall, death will eventually punish us all. His only regret?
I'm like killing Josh with a sledgehammer too.
Do you still want to kill Josh?
Yes.
And you're not going to tell me why?
Yes, sir.
I'm really curious as to why. I mean, you said that he was the only confidant you had. You didn't talk to anybody else. Why would you want to get rid of the only person that you confide in and talk to?
I don't know.
Did Zach hate Josh for protecting him? Did he feel as vulnerable as the little brother? Finally, detectives addressed the elephant in the room.
Let me ask you this. Do you always talk like you're talking to us now?
Yes, sir.
So if I talk to someone that knows you or a teacher, they're going to say, this is your demeanor. This is how you talk.
Most likely.
And so you're always monotone and robotic when you talk.
Yes, sir.
What about any emotion?
You ever laugh? Sometimes.
What makes you laugh?
Various things. Very things.
Give me an example.
While I was laughing myself when I killed my mother.
You were what?
I was laughing when I killed my mother.
What?
Were you laughing your ass off at that time?
Yes, sir.
Paradoxical laughter, laughing in really inappropriate situations, can occur in people with schizophrenia, so Zach might not be lying there. However, Zachary did not laugh at all during the interrogation. He really wanted to appear devoid of emotion and evil. But when the cop pressed and pressed Zach about a motive, he suddenly claimed his older brother sexually assaulted him a few years back.
What did he do to you?
We arrived in Tennessee.
How long ago was that cut? How long you been in Tennessee?
Since 2008, I think.
This allegation was never proven to be true, and there was no evidence to back that up. Needless to say, Josh vehemently denied this claim, and the whole family said there were no signs of this ever happening. This could either be Zach inventing a story to get out of questioning, or a real consequence of his schizophrenia. Sometimes paranoid schizophrenia will create a real impression of something false happening. In a word, delusions. It's likely Zach truly believed what he was saying, or he was just toying with the detective. Did Zach have any emotion when he thought about his future sentence?
I don't think it would really matter. Because if you give them the death sentence, they'll die, and if you give them a life sentence, they'll die in prison anyway.
The interrogation was concluded, but for his own amusement, the detective asked him one last question. That's when he got emotion, for the first and only time from Zach.
Do you always look at people through your eyebrows?
I don't know.
You've been doing it all morning. Do you do that? Is that a habit, or is that something that you're just starting to do?
I guess it's a habit. I've never really noticed.
You never really noticed?
No, sir.
Nobody's ever said anything to you about it?
No, sir.
Why'd you giggle?
It's just...
And there it goes again.
I'm not picking on you, I'm just... It looks kind of evil when you do that, I'm gonna have to say. I think you know you're doing it. And you're smiling about it, so I think you're pretty aware of what you're doing.
No, I didn't realize I was doing it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, he did. To Zach, evil was a compliment. During Zachary's trial, one question was at the center. Did he have the mental capacity to use reflection and judgment? In other words, was he or his mental illness responsible for premeditated murder? Zach would tell one psychiatrist that the voice of his father dictated that he killed his mother. Then, during his trial, he took the stand and made a shocking claim that Josh killed their brother and that Zach was just covering for his big brother. Yeah. It's surprising even to think Zach believed he could pull that off. His DNA was all over the sledgehammer. He'd even carved a special coded alphabet into the sledgehammer, bearing his initials on it. The police had notes from his journal, a note written after the murder, and a full confession on tape. Imagine being in Josh's position. Your brother killed your mother, set fire to the house, tried to kill you too, and now he's trying to frame you for the murder. Even Zach's defense attorney was shocked. He openly admitted to the court that his client killed his mother. All the defense team could do now was try to get a more lenient sentence for Zach, citing his mental health issues. But Zach's schizophrenia or depression could not be used as arguments. Zach simply didn't give his psychiatrists enough for them to agree on a verdict. Judge D. David Gay told Zach, "You become evil, Mr. Davis. You went to the dark side. It's that plain and simple." He sentenced Zach to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 51 years. Later, it was upped by 20 years for the attempted murder of Josh. Later on, Zach had an interview with Dr. Phil, and there he stated a brand new reason.
Did you kill your mother? And why did you kill her?
She wasn't taking care of my family.
And so because she wasn't taking care of you and your family, you decided to kill her.
Using little words, Zach seemed to shed a little more light on his motive. According to Josh, Melanie was taking care of the family, but Zach felt differently.
Do you want help?
Yes.
I think you need a lot of help. I think your thinking is way off.
Dr. Phil made an important remark here.
You've shown a lot of signs of needing help along the way, and nobody's ever given it to you. Nobody's ever really stepped up and said, you're not feeling right, you're not acting right, you need some help. I look in your eyes, I don't see evil, I see lost.
Yep, Zach's attorney Randy felt the same way. Any one person that encountered Zach, teachers, neighbors, immediate family, knew something was deeply wrong. His school knew, his mother knew, but nothing was done. Zach's obsession with serial killers and his attempt to detach himself emotionally is not funny. It's actually a tragic story. Zach was so affected by his father's death that his already concerning tendencies were turned into debilitating mental illness. Then there were 1,000 red flags, but none of them were taken seriously enough. Had he seen a single psychiatrist consistently, or had someone address his problems in a different way, perhaps Melanie would still be alive today, and he would be in a much better place too. Zachary Davis is a tragic story about misfortune, unaddressed red flags, and severe mental illness. It's made even more tragic by the fact that it could have gone so many different ways.
Parker County 911, where is your emergency?
My house.
What's the address?
152 River Creek Lane.
Okay, what's the emergency?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
What?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
This is Jake Evans. In 2012, he grabbed a gun and killed his mom and sister just because he felt like it. Then he called 911 and said he just wanted to kill someone. It doesn't get more cold-blooded and psychopathic than Jake's chilling statements. But what went wrong? What made Jake make this ultimate decision? And could it have been avoided? This is the full story of Jake Evans. This story begins in the upscale community of Aledo, Texas, with a large family. Jake Evans was born on May 22, 1995, the only son of Jamie and her husband. But he had 3 sisters, 2 older and 1 younger, by the name of Mallory. When they reached university age, Jake's older sisters left home, but he and Mallory stayed with their parents in this lavish, $500,000 mansion in the gated community of Aledo. Yeah, it doesn't get much safer than that.
This family had a stellar reputation. On the outside, they seemed like church-going people. They were warm. The mother, Jamie, adored her children. She instilled in them values. She wanted them to know the importance of keeping a good public image.
And Mallory loved her older brother. He was 2 years her senior and was a serious role model for her. And Jamie was proud to see their relationship blossom. Jamie was a teacher and had also worked as an assistant principal for 15 years. She loved kids, including her own, and she loved offering them what she believed was the best education there was. So, in January 2010, Mallory withdrew from school and began homeschooling. About a year later, Jake followed. It wasn't clear what prompted their decision to do so. Did the 2 kids have problems in school? Was Jamie adamant that she could offer them a better education at home? Or perhaps there were mental health issues involved? As far as the Evans neighbors knew, Jake was a quiet boy who kept to himself and always stayed out of trouble. They'd never heard arguments or disturbing conversations from their home, but who would from a huge mansion yards away from their house? On the evening of October 3rd, 2012, Mallory asked her 17-year-old brother if he wanted to watch a movie with her. Jake said no. Then he went downstairs and grabbed his dad's knife. He rushed back upstairs and began pacing frantically. All he could think about was killing his little sister. But Jake threw the knife away and went to have a pillow fight with Mallory. Then he took his grandfather's gun and shot her in the head. A few minutes later, he and killed his mom too. Jake was planning to kill his entire family, including his dad, sisters, and grandparents, but no one else was home, and before he could cross the road to his grandparents' house, he began having second thoughts. Just after midnight on October 4th, he called the emergency services.
Parker County 911, where is your emergency?
My house,
What's the address?
152 River Creek Lane.
Okay, what's the emergency?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
What?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
You just killed your mother and your sister? How did you do that?
I shot them with a .22 revolver.
Imagine being a 911 dispatcher and hearing this blasé, emotionless confession from a 17-year-old.
It's hard for us to wrap our brain around a teenage boy who kills his mother and sister, because we think about our own families. If you're not safe with your own family, then who are you safe with?
And what is your name?
Jake Evans.
Jay Evans?
Jake Evans.
Are you sure they're dead?
Yes.
The dispatcher made sure Jake would stay on the phone with her while she sent the police on their way to his house. But Jake would do so much more. He would confess his motive, share his thoughts, and reveal the darkest sides of his mind.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Hold on just a minute. Where is the gun?
It's on the kitchen counter.
Okay.
The dispatcher wanted to make sure Jake wasn't in a self-harming state of mind, for fear he might use the gun on himself. Knowing Jake was away from the gun, she then proceeded to ask him about his mental health and potential medication.
Jake?
Yes?
Are you on any kind of medication?
No. Well, I've been going to the allergist a lot lately.
Yeah.
My mom. But no, nothing other than that.
Not only was Jake not taking any mind-altering medication, but he had zero medical history regarding mental health issues. Bar Advil and Sudafed, Jake had barely taken any medication, ever. So the dispatcher moved on to the motive, much like detectives would do in an interrogation.
Okay, do you, is there any reason that you were so angry at your mother and your sister?
I don't know, I wasn't, it's weird, I wasn't even really angry with them. It just kind of happened. I've been kind of planning on killing for a while now.
The two of them, or just anybody?
Pretty much anybody.
What would you do if you heard these words? In Jake's case, it seemed like they were coming out of the blue. He had a happy, loving, rich family. He'd even admitted he wasn't angry at any of them.
Why?
I don't know. I don't really like people's kind of attitude.
Right.
I think they're very, like, you know, emotional, I don't know, verbally rude to each other and stuff like that.
Right.
And I don't know.
It's okay.
It's just my family, I don't know, they're just kind of really, I guess this is really selfish to say, but to me, I felt like they were just suffocating me in a way. I don't know. I think obviously, you know, I'm pretty, I guess, evil, but that's, whatever.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Talk about reasons for murdering your family. Being evil doesn't really sound like a rational, real-world reason. It sounds more like something out of a horror movie, but we'll get to that later.
Were your mom and sister in their beds?
No, this is really gonna mess me up for this, you know, in the future. See, my sister, I told my sister that my mom needed her.
Mm-hmm.
She was in her room, and she came out of her room, and I shot her, and rolled down the stairs, and I shot her again. And then I went down and I shot my mom about maybe 3 or 4 times. But I'll never forget this.
Okay, that's fine.
My sister, she came down the stairs and she was screaming, and I was telling her that I'm sorry, but to just hold still. That, you know, I was just gonna make it go away, you know, but she just kept on freaking out. But finally she fell down and I shot her in the head about probably 3 times.
When the dispatcher asked Jake about his dad's whereabouts, he said he was in Washington, D.C. on business. Then he added he didn't want any visitors in jail. He knew he was going to prison, but he didn't want to see the rest of his family again. Whether that was hatred or remorse over his actions remains unclear. Throughout most of the call, Jake sounded emotionless, describing his actions almost as if he was having an out-of-body experience. But as he turned the porch lights on, expecting the police officers, he started to panic.
Are you okay, Jake?
I'm just thinking about my sister.
Yeah. How old is she?
She's 15.
15?
Yeah. She was, I don't know. She had a really sweet side, but, you know, she was kind of racist and, I don't know, kind of rude to me sometimes, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
As the dispatcher tried to assure him everything will be all right and to calm him down, he got more anxious.
I'm like really worried about, like, you know, like nightmares and stuff like that. Are there any type of medication for that and stuff?
Well, I think there is. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but, you know, the justice system, and I'm sure your family will get you the support you need.
Sure. Worry about nightmares after gunning your family down. Then, unprompted, Jake made another shocking statement.
I don't mean to sound like a wimp or anything, but, you know, this is... wow. I've never, like, done anything violent in my whole life, you know?
If this is true, then what made Jake click out all of a sudden? And how come he was planning to kill his entire family if he never liked violence? Was his statement just an attempt to justify his horrific actions? At the end of the 911 call, the dispatcher guided Jake to the front of the house so the officers could see him.
Open the front door. Do you have a glass screen door or a glass door, or just the front door?
You know, just the front door.
Okay. When you open the front door, step back, put your hands behind your head, and slowly walk outside. Okay?
Jake did as he was told. As soon as he'd called 911, he had already decided he was going to give himself in.
He gave himself up without a fight. It's almost as if he realized what he had done as he snapped back into reality.
He wasn't going to resist his arrest, and he wasn't going to avoid giving a full confession. After all, he'd said enough on the phone already. As he was being held on a $750,000 bond, Jake wrote a 4-page confession that would reveal his thoughts prior to, during, and after the murders. I had just got home from the allergist when I started watching Rob Zombie's Halloween. In the movie, a 12-year-old boy murders his stepfather, sister, and her sister's boyfriend. It was the 3rd time this week that I watched it. While watching it, I was amazed at how at ease the boy was during the murders and how little remorse he had afterward. I was thinking to myself, it would be the same for me when I kill someone. So for Jake, the biggest influence was a horror movie that he watched obsessively. He didn't speak of family abuse or any traumatic experience from the past.
Everybody else, that's what the movie was, entertainment. But for Jake, it was something more. it was his inspiration to kill.
The movie's main character, Michael Myers, has a psychopathic tendency that appealed to Jake. The lack of remorse, the murderous rampage, and the overall lack of emotion when killing their family. Jake wanted to take the Halloween role very seriously. He wrote, "My plan was to kill my sister and my mom at my house and then go over to my grandparents and kill my oldest sister Emily and my 2 grandparents. He would only spare his dad because he was out of town. Or perhaps he planned the attack for the weekend he'd be out of town, making sure he wouldn't be there to defend his family." Later in his confession, Jake wrote something interesting. The day before he shot his sister, she'd made a racist comment and he felt ever more distanced from his family. The people who are racists, bullies, and who are full of themselves are the really evil ones. And it amazes me because those 3 qualities are extremely common today. I am very sad because I felt like my own family were becoming the people I hate. If 15-year-old Mallory made a racist comment, it is pretty sad. But killing your sister might just be a little more evil than that. Blaming the victim can often be seen in psychopaths' arguments during interrogations or confessions. By pointing out flaws in the victim's behavior, they justify their action and even take on a moral high ground, like they only sought justice for those wronged by the victim. A very messed up kind of vigilante justice. And now, Jake was identifying with Halloween's Michael Myers even more, as Michael also had a sister with questionable behavior.
Jake sees his sister, Mallory, just like Michael Myers sees his sister in the film Halloween. Doesn't try to rationalize with her, doesn't try to educate her, doesn't try to work with her. He just has rage and anger directed at her.
According to psychologists, Halloween was a solution to Jake's hatred for his family. It was the missing piece to the evil puzzle.
Because he hated his family. And he truly was without emotion. But for Jake, he somehow saw that as the key to kill his family.
Jake also gave a full timeline of events in his written confession. In the first part of the day, he hit golf balls, ran errands with his grandmother, and saw his allergy doctor with his sister. That's when Mallory made her racist comment, and Jake cut her off. Then he watched TV at home. By now, he already had a knife in his pocket and was contemplating killing his sister. Then he decided he would kill his mother, too. I then spent probably over an hour walking nervously around the house thinking how life will never be the same and how I would never see them again. This was before he actually killed his family. Couldn't he have stopped the massacre if he'd already realized he wouldn't see them again? After Mallory invited him to watch a movie with her, he declined and paced around some more. Half an hour later, he came back into the living room and threw a pillow at Mallory. They then had a pillow fight. Yeah, minutes before the murders, Jake connected with his sister.
Pillow fight wasn't entirely random. It appears that what Jake was doing was perhaps using the pillow fight to get things ramped up and then be able to pull out the knife and commit the crime.
Mallory thought he'd finally forgiven her for her nasty comment earlier. Then Jake invited her to watch a movie with him as a gesture of goodwill, but he was still carrying his knife. He then suddenly changed his mind regarding the murder weapon. He decided to go for his grandfather's gun so as to avoid his family feeling a lot of pain.
He didn't want her to suffer the way Michael Myers' sister had suffered after being stabbed multiple times.
Jake then grabbed his .22 caliber revolver and went upstairs to Mallory's room. He told her their mom wanted to see her and she was heading downstairs, and he shot her several times in the back and the head. Then he went downstairs to do the same to his mother, but Jamie had time to hear the shots and see her daughter lying in a pool of blood. In fact, Jamie was already at the bottom of the stairs looking into her son's eyes and pleading for her life when he shot her 4 times in the chest. But minutes later, he realized his sister was still alive. In shock, I ran up to my room and was screaming at the top of my lungs that I am really messed up and that I killed my mom and sister. As I emptied the shells on my bed, I heard noises and realized that Mallory was still alive. When I loaded the gun back up, I was shouting I was sorry and ran as fast as I could to kill her. I made sure my mom was dead and her again in the head. Once again, the tragedy could have been stopped at least partially if Jake would have called the emergency services when he realized his sister was still alive. But in his warped reality, he was ending their suffering. Jake's trial was pretty straightforward. The evidence was there, and the confession was very clear. When convicting someone of murder, it's important to see if the killer has remorse over their actions. Jake's confession revealed a great deal of guilt. I now know, though, that I'm done killing. It's the most dreadful and terrifying thing I will ever experience, and what happened last night will haunt me forever. But considering his psychopathic profile, this could also be something he wrote at the end of the confession, knowing it would earn him a lesser sentence. Also, he kept talking about how killing his mother and sister was horrible for him, not for them. He expressed how terrifying it was for him and even asked the 911 dispatcher about medication for his upcoming nightmares. Not once did he apologize to his family for this. However, it really seemed like Jake didn't like the experience of killing his family. After all, he could have crossed the road and killed his grandparents and older sister, but something stopped him. Finally, he'd realized that killing his family in real life isn't the same as watching a movie about it.
Jake took a gory movie that he watched and turned it into a real-life horror story.
Jake's trial was a real-life horror story for his family, friends, and anyone watching.
Jacob Evans walked into the courtroom still looking much like the frail 17-year-old teenager of 2.5 years ago when he killed his mother and 15-year-old sister. He came to court to enter his plea.
Guilty. And you're telling me that voluntarily? Yes, sir.
It was truly heartbreaking to learn of such a senseless crime. And it was really shocking to see all of those who spoke of Jake. No one, absolutely no one, had seen any red flags.
Nobody suspected anything amiss with Jake. He just seemed like a normal guy, and that's why it was so shocking.
But there might be an explanation for this.
A pattern you might often see in a wealthy family is that of sort of a superficial presentation that everything is just fine, a hiding of the flaws, especially if that family's very well established.
The Evans family lived in a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom mansion with a huge pool and a golf course. Jamie was particularly preoccupied with keeping up appearances and had taught her children how to behave in society. Does this mean the family had dark secrets that never came out? Did Jake suffer from a mental disorder and did his family hide it just to keep up appearances? Perhaps they even avoided Jake being treated for it in case people were biased about therapy. Or perhaps Jake's sudden downfall was just a tragic incident that could not have been prevented. When he was arrested, Jake was charged with capital murder. In Texas, this is punishable by either death or life in prison without the possibility of parole. But Jake was only 17 at the time of the murder, so the United States Supreme Court ruled both punishments unconstitutional in his case. His trial began 2.5 years after the murder, as the court wasn't sure he was mentally stable enough to stand trial. In fact, as he awaited his trial, Jake spent his time in a mental health institution, much like his idol, Michael Myers.
Once Jake was taken away, he has refused to have contact with any family members. He has refused to speak to psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers. He has refused to ever reveal what was actually going on in his emotional brain during the time that he killed his mother and sister.
Jake finally stood trial in April 2015.
Mr. Evans, what is your plea with regard to count 2 and count 3?
Guilty.
And you're telling me that voluntarily?
Yes, sir.
He accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 45 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 22 years. Jake's family supported this deal and amazed District Attorney Robert DuBois with their forgiveness for Jake.
What that really tells you is the absolute power of forgiveness of this family, given the circumstances of the father and the siblings of Jake Evans to have lost a sibling and their mother. They have forgiven him to depths that just should inspire everybody in this case.
With this amount of love and support, Jake might just realize the gravity of his actions. This is the plot of Rob Zombie's Halloween. On Halloween, in Haydenfield, Illinois, having already shown signs of psychopathic tendencies, 10-year-old Michael Myers murders a school bully named Wesley. Later that night, Michael murders his older sister Judith, his mother's boyfriend Ronnie, and Judith's boyfriend Steve. He is then sent to a mental institution and is treated by a child psychologist, but escapes 15 years later and returns to his childhood home to get his knife and his mask and continues on a killing spree. Michael Myers' treatment is futile, and even 15 years later, he has the same tendencies.
I don't know what to say.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Wow! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And we had a lot today.
How many things must go wrong for someone to kill their father and then laugh about it on YouTube? In the disturbing case of Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero, no one really has an answer to that question. One day, Sierra was a sweet 16-year-old who enjoyed leisure activities with her dad and took a lot of photos with him. The next, she burned him and eloped with her crazy boyfriend. Then, she blamed it all on her father.
He locks me in place and starts pushing me and hitting me around.
But were any of her claims true? And if so, how come nobody knew about them? This is the full story of Sierra Halseth, her sudden descent into madness, and the tragic death of Daniel Halseth. Today's story begins in Las Vegas, Nevada, but its true origins lie in Estacada, Oregon. This is where Daniel Halseth was born in 1975 or 1976. His family went all the way back to some of Oregon's earliest settlers. Daniel got a bachelor's degree in music at Western Oregon University, and during college, he was known as Drummer Dan. Daniel didn't forget about his passion for music, but he went on to earn a business degree from Corbin University in Salem. He was set to become a successful entrepreneur, and soon enough he did. By 2020, he'd amassed 20,000 followers on Instagram, sharing motivational posts about politics, economics, and tech, and videos of his walks through the US.
Hello friends, over here in Rhode Island, checking out the scene, sporting it out. Hitting a hard little bit of windy up here, but little wind up here, but it's just so great.
But no matter what he said in his videos, he ended them with a positive, grateful note.
And I hope today you remember how amazing you are. Don't forget about your gifts that God's blessed you with, and have a beautiful rest of your Easter.
Sometime in his 20s, Daniel met Elizabeth Palagian, the youngest woman ever elected to the Nevada State Senate. In March 2001, the two got married. This is how Daniel ended up moving to Nevada. Daniel and Elizabeth had 3 children together: Dana, Jordan, and Sierra, and the happy family lived in Las Vegas as Daniel found a job in the city. But the family wasn't happy for a very long time, and a decade after their wedding, Daniel and Elizabeth broke it off. What's worse, Daniel's face made it to the local newspapers too, and he wasn't portrayed in a good light. In October 2011, Daniel was arrested after Elizabeth claimed he had tried to force himself on her. Married or not, it has to be consensual. It's unclear just how far Daniel went, but there was some inappropriate touching, and Elizabeth wanted to make it clear that such a thing must not happen again. A month later, Daniel filed for divorce and claimed Elizabeth was having an affair, but he also pleaded guilty to the misdemeanor charges, and he was sentenced to 6 months probation and anger management class. Sierra and her siblings were still very young when their parents got divorced, but the drama wouldn't end there. Both parents remarried, but Daniel's second marriage ended even faster than the first. However, he and his second wife remained friends, and they even kept their joint bank account. But amidst this lack of stability at home, something else happened. Elizabeth started a long custody battle over the 3 children, and it was a very long, contentious, and cumbersome process. All of this was going on as Sierra started high school. Needless to say, it was tough on her and her 2 siblings. Eventually, her siblings would move in with Elizabeth while Sierra would stay with Daniel. She seemed to be very close with her dad, and he would post a myriad of pictures showing the 2 of them having fun. The 2 had lots of pictures together, and Daniel would constantly tell social media how much he loved his youngest daughter. Daniel's family saw his dedication to his children every single day, commenting, his world was all about his children. They were his first in life, always. This is precisely what makes what's about to happen very tragic. In June 2020, 15-year-old Sierra started dating Aaron Guerrero, who was 2 years older than her. But this wasn't your usual casual high school dating. Sierra and Aaron's relationship progressed extremely fast, and it looked like each was obsessed with the other. They started making very worrying plans for the future, like robbing both their parents and running off to California. You don't expect teenagers to be extremely responsible or level-headed, but with these two, it was on a whole new level. Both sets of parents were very reluctant to let their kids date each other. They saw an immediate change for the worse in their behavior, and they were worried this would only get worse if they let it happen. Sadly, it was their worries that pushed them to their most evil. By Christmas that year, Aaron and Sierra's families thought they had stopped dating each other. They were forbidden to date, and they seemed like they had finally listened to their parents' advice. But something else entirely was happening. Sierra and Aaron were biding their time and quietly plotting their ultimate revenge on their families. The plan was simple. Remove the parents who stood in their way. They had to be together, no matter what. On December 16th, 2020, Sierra turned 16. So Daniel wrote a heartfelt post, once again professing his love for his youngest daughter. I dreamed a dream when I was 9 about having children, being a husband, and being the best dad I could be, like my pa. Seeing you now brings me so much joy. I love you for eternity, and I thank Jesus for the miracle of Sierra Marie Halseth. Who would think that at the same time, Sierra was plotting her father's murder? On April 3rd, Daniel posted an old video of himself and Sierra doing a dance. He wrote, "Sierra and I were enjoying videos together last night. 5 days later, Aaron ran away from home, but Aaron's family wouldn't be the only ones worrying that day." That same day, $1,300 was withdrawn from Daniel's bank account without warning. This seemed odd to his ex-wife. They shared the account, and Daniel would never withdraw such large amounts without letting her know why. Daniel's ex-wife sent him a text, but he didn't respond all day. By now, many people were worried about Daniel's radio silence, including Elizabeth and Christine, his mother. Elizabeth then texted Sierra, "Hey Sierra, I'm trying to get a hold of your dad. Where is he?" You'd expect Sierra wouldn't reply, but here's what she texted back. "His phone has been acting up, but he's okay. It should be all fixed by tomorrow night. No worries." But Daniel's family still worried. He would have used his laptop to contact them if his phone had problems. And smartphones in 2021 rarely act up, as Sierra claimed. Daniel would have gotten it fixed within a day or two. What's more, Daniel was always on social media, constantly posting Instagram videos and tweeting his thoughts to his many followers. His mom knew this, so Daniel's silence worried her a lot. She asked a family friend if they could quickly check if Daniel was at home. The family friend called Sierra and asked her if she knew where her dad was. She said he was in the shower. When the friend asked her why he wasn't answering his phone, she said it was broken. She confidently assured her family friend that she would tell Daniel to call them back on someone else's phone as soon as he was out of the bathroom. But as you can imagine, he didn't. And on the next day, Sierra stopped responding to calls and messages from her family. She knew the broken phone excuse would only last so long. So that day, Christine sent Sierra another text message. "Peggy might come over and check. This is ridiculous. He has laptop and Donna is concerned. So am I. Would you please have your dad call me on your phone? Yes, but Peggy wants to call him first. He's in the shower." Just how much is Daniel in the shower? Christine had a very bad feeling about it. "Okay, Sierra, I want to call your dad right away. I am very serious." When Sierra didn't answer the text, Christine called her. She demanded that she speak to Daniel, but guess what Sierra said? He was in the shower. Christine threatened to call the police, and Sierra hung up. That morning, CCTV footage showed Daniel's blue Nissan Altima leaving the area. Meanwhile, Christine was getting more and more anxious. "Sierra, I want to talk to my son. What is the problem? Do I need to call the police?" Joey and Peggy are on their way. Joey and Peggy, Daniel's landlords, were indeed on their way, but they had told Christine it would take a few hours as they were out somewhere else. By the time the landlords arrived, Christine had already called 911.
How may I help you?
Yeah, hi, I need a welfare check. I don't know if that's...
On who are we doing a welfare check?
For my son. He's been missing for 2 days. His work's called, his family's called, I've called, his ex-wife's called, and there's nobody answering the phone, and nobody is, there's nothing. Nobody can get a hold of him, and then his work called, and they can't get a hold of him, and it's really, really, he just doesn't act like this.
Okay. Does he live alone?
He lives with his 16-year-old daughter, who is not answering the phone.
Okay.
Or replying to a text.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird part is, I'll just tell you this, there's been ATM withdrawals at 3 different ATMs.
The dispatcher would send officers to the address, but Joey and Peggy would arrive first, and their discovery would be truly heartbreaking. When Peggy and Joey arrived at Daniel's home, the front door was open and Daniel's car was missing. The pair slowly opened the front door, only to be overwhelmed by a strong smoke smell. Then there was a huge scorched patch on the floor in the living room. Even more scary, Joey and Peggy carefully searched through every room of the house, hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. The house was empty, apart from the worrying fire remnants, and there was no sign of Daniel or Sierra. But this was before Peggy and Joey walked into the garage. The whole place smelled like lighter fluid. In the middle of the garage was a sleeping bag, clearly containing something. So Peggy and Joey looked inside. It was Daniel's body, burnt to a crisp and mutilated in every way imaginable.
911 emergency, Guerrero 16497. Do you need police, fire, or medical?
There's a dead body on there. Oh my God, 8417 Dumpsy Court. 8417 Dumpsy Court.
Do you need police, fire, or medical?
There was a fire, and we went in to investigate. The fire must be a couple days old. But there's a dead body in the garage. We just found him with the homeowner that doesn't live here.
Okay, and you're in there right now?
Yes, yes.
Within minutes, the police made it to the address too. Daniel had been viciously killed at the age of 45. His life had been cut short and in a manner almost too gruesome to describe. But as devastated as everyone was, no one could explain how this could have happened. This was just the beginning of an investigation that would turn the life of this family upside down. The forensic team retrieved a long list of distressing clues from the Halseth home. First, there was the chainsaw in the living room, blatantly thrown on the floor. In the kitchen, there was also a saw, and there was blood all along its edge. In the kitchen sink were 2 knives. All of the weapons had been used. The police also found receipts from a Home Depot store and an ATM. But although there was a fire pit in the living room and a bloody saw in the kitchen, someone had made serious attempts to also clean the house. Daniel's autopsy revealed a truly gruesome picture. The autopsy documents 70 cutting force injuries, some even after he was dead. Most of them were on his head, neck, and torso. His body, which was burned from head to toe, had been stuffed in a sleeping bag before it was set on fire in the home's garage near Durango and Alta Drives, the report said. Whoever wanted him dead, the detectives figured, really hated him. They stabbed him 70 times, and after he died, they proceeded to mute his body. After they had their evil fun, they burned his body until he could barely be identified. When the detectives spoke to the family, they realized no one was a clear suspect. No one could comprehend why Daniel would have such an enemy, or anyone this violent in his proximity. But there was one red flag. Sierra had acted pretty sketchy with her grandmother, Christine, claiming her dad was in the shower every time she would inquire about him, avoiding her texts altogether later on. Also, Sierra was missing from home, and by now, the detectives knew she lived with her dad, so by April 9th, the police had a lead. The detectives tracked the Home Depot receipt to a local store and accessed their CCTV footage. Lo and behold, they saw Aaron Guerra buying the saw, gloves, and lighter fluid. CCTV footage from the same day showed Sierra at a Winco supermarket carrying 2 gallons of bleach. Of course, she also used Daniel's credit card for the purchase. Imagine knowing that one day you'll be financing your daughter's plan to murder you and dispose of your body. To think Sierra was once the cute little curly-haired girl that posed for adorable family pictures right next to her dad. As the police learned about Aaron Guerra, they started piecing the puzzle together. They discovered that he had run away from home on April 8th, and that he and Sierra had been told not to date each other by both their families. Paired with the CCTV footage, the police had enough to issue a warrant for their arrest. On April 13th, the young couple was seen on a street security camera 400 miles away in Salt Lake City, Utah. They were happy, young, and in love. But the footage really changes when you consider what they'd done just days before. Aaron and Sierra were stopped by the police as they suspected they hadn't paid for the bus tickets. But when they ran a quick background check, they found out they were actually wanted for murder.
2 teens wanted in connection with a homicide have been taken into custody.
Daniel Halseth is the father of one of these teenagers, and police say his 16-year-old daughter and her 18-year-old boyfriend are accused of killing him and then trying to cover it up.
As the detectives took the couple into custody, another group of detectives found Daniel's Nissan abandoned after Sierra and Aaron used it to flee the crime scene. In the trunk of the car was a bloody blanket, and here we get to the darkest part of the video yet. The police took Sierra and Aaron's phones as evidence. The next natural step was to look through the photos and videos folders. This is what they found on Sierra's phone.
I don't know what to say.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. After murdering day 3 after murdering somebody.
Wow! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And we had a lot today.
Are they kids? Are they evil monsters? Perhaps their young ages and baby faces are precisely what makes this video extra creepy. In this video, initially recorded for YouTube, Sierra and Aaron are happily joking about murdering Daniel. They seem to have zero remorse, and their reason for it seems incredibly immature.
And we had a lot today.
This is the sad reality of psychopathic killers. They don't care about others' emotions or about causing pain, destruction, and misery. They see other people as objects that stand in their way and do whatever it takes to eliminate hurdles that bother them. For Sierra, her dad was just a hurdle in the way of her teenage relationship. But would Aaron have killed his parents too? As soon as Sierra and Aaron were arrested in Utah, they were extracted to Nevada and held inside the Clark County Detention Center.
Now, the boyfriend is identified as Aaron Guerrero. The I-team also obtained documents stating Utah Transit Authority police arrested him on a fugitive warrant at a train station. Now, the 16-year-old, again, we've learned she is the victim's daughter, and Metro police say she stole his car.
The news immediately sent shockwaves throughout the country. You don't hear of too many girls killing their dads, let alone stabbing them 70 times and burning them inside their home to have sex. This was deeply shocking and distressing to the extended families. And it was also shocking to everyone who handled the case.
It's definitely disturbing when you have such a young man and a young woman that are being accused of such a horrific crime. And when you look at the crime scene in itself, it is definitely something that's disturbing. There's no question they had made attempts to dismember his body. We've recovered a chainsaw, circular saw, and a handsaw inside the house that was recently purchased and used.
Both Sierra and Aaron were charged with murder with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit murder, arson, robbery with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit robbery, and 4 counts of fraudulent use of a credit or debit card. But there were still a few plot twists on the way.
Teens accused of killing a Las Vegas man has a new high-profile attorney. Court filings say 18-year-old Aaron Guerrero has retained Gabriel Grasso. Now, Grasso is known for representing O.J. Simpson in his 2007 Palace Station memorabilia case.
This meant that Aaron had a strong chance to get off with a lighter sentence.
Now that hopefully they are safe and sound and I mean they're in the hands of the authorities at this point, but at least they're not, you know, out there on their own, and I mean they're both pretty young people. Now, you know, reality sets in and we have to see what's up and what the evidence shows.
This was good news for Aaron, as the prosecution was seeking the death penalty for him. Of course, Sierra was still too young to receive the death penalty, no matter her lawyer, and even though she was tried as an adult. On June 15th, 2021, Sierra and Aaron pleaded not guilty on their first arraignment hearing.
Do you understand the 9 charges that you're facing in the indictment?
Yes.
Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
The teens were not ready to take responsibility for their crimes, even though just a few months before they were casually joking about it in a home video. The case gained even more attention as people were shocked with Sierra's lack of remorse. It was her father after all, and she didn't seem to mind losing her whole family over it either.
We are digging deeper into a video that shows two teenagers accused of killing a father, discussing and joking about killing someone. 18-year-old Aaron Guerrero and 16-year-old Sierra Halseth are facing a slew of charges in this murder case.
However, for the attorney that helped Daniel in his custody battle against Elizabeth, this wasn't exactly surprising.
I saw a lot of things with Sierra that caused me concern. It indicates to me that something else is going on with her, and I don't know who at this point is to blame for that. But I'm less concerned about placing blame than I am with regard to this child and the child's relationship with the parent.
Remember Daniel's very complicated family history, the divorces, and years-long custody battles? According to a family therapist, this is enough to throw a child off the rails.
If there has been potentially any history of trauma, has there ever been any history of, inconsistency, changes in the home, losses, just compounding factors, honestly, that kind of build up to create a perfect storm.
And here's what Aaron and Sierra's video shows, according to her.
There was a lot that kind of showed dynamics in the relationship and a little bit of power relationally.
In the video, Aaron played Sierra and jokes that this was payment from Sierra for doing her dark bidding. That's not worrying for a couple of high school teens. I don't really know what is. But perhaps the most disturbing part of the couple's video is their absolute lack of remorse. Daniel's family spoke about this.
The total lack of remorse on display in the video is both reprehensible and unforgivable. While we are grateful for the work of the detectives and the district attorney, we are waiting for justice to be served with maximum accountability allowed. We love Dan very much and miss him every moment of the day. This is the only statement we will be making.
In May 2022, there was a big update to the case. Both Aaron and Sierra changed their pleas to guilty on all 9 charges.
Ms. Halseth, in accordance to the laws of the state of Nevada, you're going to be adjudicated guilty on count 1, conspiracy to commit murder. Count 2, first-degree murder with use of a deadly weapon. Count 3, first-degree arson. Count 4, fraudulent use of a credit or a debit card.
This doesn't necessarily mean that they suddenly feel remorse for their actions. Rather, this was a plea deal that offered both a fairly light sentence.
The judge sentencing the teens to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 22 years served. Those were terms specified in an agreement when the teens pleaded guilty to murder and other charges.
In 22 years, both teens might be out, around the age of 40, with half a life ahead of them. After Sierra's sentencing, Christine spoke to her in tears.
Where did the evil come that was bred into a soul that murders their own father?
Imagine knowing your granddaughter murdered your son, then tried to devour and burn him to a crisp.
You're in a tough spot because your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
She's not my granddaughter.
What's worse, Sierra never seemed to show any remorse over the murder. In fact, even at her sentencing, she tried to pin the blame on her father, claiming Daniel was a to her, so she had no choice.
He locks me in place and starts pushing and hitting me around.
Sierra, if your parent is a to you, you can leave home and call the police. Murder is rarely a solution. At the end of the day, Aaron was the only one who offered an apology.
I ask for forgiveness as I get sentenced today, and I hope it brings you a little peace.
Daniel Halseth's loved ones pointing out how Aaron Guerrero appeared to show remorse and emotion, while they believe Sierra did not.
This is the last worrying twist of this already tragic case. With a little luck, Aaron might find the right kind of care inside prison, and by the time he's released, he might be ready for a new, peaceful life. But is there any recovery or redemption for a girl who feels no emotion after her own dad? Thanks for watching, you guys. What are your thoughts on this case? Were Aaron and Sierra's sentences enough to bring justice to Daniel? And could Sierra's descent into madness be prevented? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and before you go, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons. See you next time, and keep yourselves